I'm no stranger to making bowls, but the thing is, I've made these all with my lathe. How could I make a bowl with another tool to at least reduce the waste, reduce the material cost, and potentially even speed it up? For those people that want to make a bowl but don't have a lathe, the solution, believe it or not, is a bandsaw. This jig that I've made will allow you to make a bowl. But here's the deal. I'm midway through this experiment. This is a bowl made of 1/2-inch material. This is not an attractive looking bowl. I believe I am in a Goldilocks situation. My goal is to make a bowl out of a flat stock material with just my bandsaw and this jig. So if you just have a bandsaw, it might unlock the ability for you to make a bowl as well. Let's try.
The first step in making this bowl, after I cut the initial ring, was to start cutting concentric rings at a taper. And very quickly, I made a mistake. And that is, in my previous videos, when I've used this jig, I've used tape and CA glue to hold my little dowel down. And because I did so many circles with this jig, the tape gave way.
That's not good.
And this got it off track, as you'll see here in a second, which really
think I know what
screwed this
happened
test piece
here.
up. So I had to start over right away, which was not a good start.
That right there is my first failure. That's not gonna stop me though. Okay. Enter the cut.
As I'm cutting this next piece, I'm thinking that I've done all of my tests to this point with the full ring method, as opposed to cutting it into 2 half rings, which would give you a different type of glue up. With the tapered cut, you need to be careful about the size that it is, and it's a little bit harder to clamp. So something to consider when you do it. Hiding the straight cuts was actually easier.
Here is the test, the last 5 rings that I've cut, and this is the bottom that I've been cutting them out of. If I continue to go, I will just get a deeper bowl with this same profile, which is actually pretty nice. 35 degrees feels good. What are you doing? You want this? When you're measuring for your initial circle, you want to measure at the height of your material thickness, not at the base of the jig. You can see the significant taper on the outside. So I'll be cutting that. The bottom side will be significantly smaller. If you were all the way down here measuring, you will be off by this amount, the bottom to the edge of the board. And so obviously you need to come up all the way to the top on the far end of your blade to establish your first cut. You don't want to have any flat spots.
One easy way is to simply just put your board on there, slide it up, and make sure that you're going to not leave any flat spots. And that's exactly what I did here. This is especially important if your blank is not a perfect square. When you're cutting these thicker materials, you want to enter the cut with the grain. I think I say that 3 or 4 times in the video, but it's really important so that you can hide it later on. And it still doesn't hide it perfectly, as you'll see at the end of the video.
My rotation method is still allowing rocking to happen, which gives me this line that I have to deal with. You can see here, and that's not perfect. This was my first experiment out of cheap material, 1/2-inch plywood, and it was 16 by 16. This resulted in something that looks almost like a functional bowl. This was my attempt with 8/4 mahogany. I used a much smaller piece because I was trying to save the material in case this didn't work out. Ultimately, this is not a very attractive bowl, but it does show me that this is possible. This I can still put on the lathe and turn it into something. It has the majority of the material sort of hogged out, and that saves a lot of wood, because normally you're taking a blank and you're turning all of this middle area into dust. Having the ability to save hardwood like this is probably something that anybody with a lathe should do. If you have a bandsaw, I think I can dial in and give you a good recommendation. It's gonna take me one more round of exploration to figure out the math for 3/4 inch material, do it a little bit bigger so that I have a flatter bottom and not so much of a cone shape.
It turns out that my Goldilocks thought was correct. 3/4 inch material or 4/4 material is actually the best ratio for these. You don't have to have too many layers, which cuts down on your margin for error, and it just looks better. I also figured out that 45 degrees is the best angle because it's simply the easiest to figure out math-wise.
So I resawed this 8/4 mahogany, and I added the dowel halfway off right in the middle of these two boards. They both have one. So theoretically, I can put this in and make my cuts like that. I'll know pretty quickly if it's gonna work or not after I do the first cut. So let's do it.
You're probably realizing that I'm cutting this out of two pieces at this point instead of one continuous ring. And while I made my first error cutting it a little bit short here, I was able to fix that without wasting any wood. After I resawed this piece, I made sure to plane the top of it so that these are perfectly smooth pieces, because those will be the glue faces.
All right, so
theoretically
this should also work as long as we're
The face that's towards the bottom that you can see now is also planed in accordance with the other piece so that those mating faces line up well. This method gives you an easier way to glue two flat spots rather than the angled scarf joint.
at 45 degrees, the offset is actually the thickness of your material. So taking my offset, lining up where it was and where it's going on my jig, and then
I'm going to show you the final result in a second, but I will give you a couple of tips if you're going to do this for yourself. I would do the two-part method as I'm showing here. I think that will give you likely the best results without using a lathe.
That's what you want.
One of the big mistakes that I made is not gluing up these cut-off pieces the same day. The wood actually moves quite a bit when you make these types of cuts, and you need to do it quickly.
And WD-40 apparently dissolves super glue. I don't have any acetone, but that works better.
This is the flat joint after it's been glued up. I lost the footage of that, sorry about that. But I can tell you it was chaotic. It's not an easy thing to glue up. So like I said, Glue 2 rings at a time when you do this, and you can get away with making a bowl without using any other tool than your bandsaw and a sander. I did take this cone that had a really bad glue up to the lathe because I have one and it fit. And I just trued it up because I don't want to waste mahogany. Who does? I don't know what I'll do with this. It's not my favorite shape, but it's technically a vessel. Thanks for watching. My name is Nick. This is Design is Blank. Bye.